Now, let's give people the time to join. I think there might be some countdown. Let me see how it looks live. I'm always confused about those first few seconds. No, we are live. I can see myself on YouTube, which is always like, whoa, Mom, you can see me there. So it feels like to be on national TV. But let's give folks like, well, we don't have any guests yet, so oh, there's the first one. Okay, so let's wait until at least a few souls join us before doing the intros. Are you at home or are you in the office?
I'm at home right now. Yes.
So I need to ask whether you have Polish roots, because your surname sounds like a Polish equivalent of the name Mark.
Yeah. I get that a lot. And actually, like, oftentimes, like, my first name is Christian. People oftentimes address me with Marek because, it's a first name. But I actually don't have Polish roots. I have some Czech roots, some French roots. So last name came from somewhere there.
Someone was no, I'm moving in the wrong direction. Let's see. No comments. Live viewers. I think that might be wrong. Let's see how it looks on LinkedIn. Okay. So the StreamYard is lying to me because I can see the 10 people that joined. So I hope there'll be many more. So let's kick it off. Hi, everyone. You probably know me because I'm hosting this event. I'm Dr. Bart. I run a lot of LinkedIn-related posts about product management. I have my blog, YouTube channel, all those good things. But I'm not the star here. Christian is. Hi, Christian. Thank you for joining us.
Of course. Pleasure to be here.
So, you're from Product Board, and it's one of the best tools to help product managers. And boy, we know we need help. So before we go to user-centricity, which is the topic of today's live, tell us about yourself. How do you fare as a VP of such an important tool for us PMs?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's an honor, it's a privilege. But about me, I'm a product guy. I'm personally super passionate about the product management craft, and that's why I was super excited to join Product Board. And for those that aren't super familiar, Product Board is a customer-centric, end-to-end product management platform, and so we help product managers focus on the product management craft, trying to get them out of spreadsheets, out of poor PowerPointing, getting them to work with the engineers, with designer, with the customers, and we're helping product leaders run their product organization, and really try to do all that in a very customer-centric ways with recent launches like Product Board Pulse, which really helps you control the feedback in your organization and get AI insights from it. And it's a really great product, it's a really great company, and really throughout my career, before Product Board, I was at DocuSign, wearing different hats on the enterprise side, on the growth side, scaling a product team there, as well as at Meta. I was working on advertising engagement. I really had this knack for the product management craft. So when there was like a new planning cycle that was tested, I'd be the guinea pig for our product operations team. When there was an opportunity to improve the craft with the PMs on my teams or learning from others, such as a Facebook through product management circle, I always felt drawn to that. So I hope I can infuse into that into Product Board to really help people focus on the product management craft.
Awesome. So since you mentioned that you are very user-centric in Product Board,
Absolutely.
What is user-centricity for you then? Well, I don't want to hear like the Wikipedia definition. It's like, imagine I'm a junior PM joining your team, and I always thought it's about features and money, and you tell me I'm supposed to be user-centric, and I'm a what?
Yeah. No, totally. So it really starts. It really means that you're starting with the customer, you're building for the customer, and you're shipping and you're delivering with the customer. So a product where we follow this like framework, a product excellence framework, where there's three key pieces like ideation, discovery, and delivery. And it basically means you're being customer centric throughout. And so the way that starts is, for example, like at the very beginning, when you're a new product manager, for example, at product board, the way you basically start the job is you look into product board, you look at all the customer feedback that is there through AI in a way of like, hey, what are customers saying about the product, and you really start anchoring in those pain points really, really quickly, and you really start day one from there. Now, not everybody starts like this, and not everybody has that kind of luxury, but like it's a mindset, it's a culture, it's a process. So yeah, I think it's key for being successful as a product manager.
Well, I did mention that I would be a junior joining your team, and I know that just like me, you've been a mentor for many PMs. So how did this shape your career? I'm pretty interesting to compare notes, so to say.
Sure. So yeah, I mean, look, I think mentorship is incredibly important. I've had the opportunity to work with great product people at DocuSign and Meta with both experience on the B2B side, on the B2C side, shipping new products, whatever else. And I think mentorship is an incredibly important subject. And I encourage PMs on my teams, PMs that I mentor, to always like be on the lookout for mentorship and try to grow. And I think there's a few things I recommend. There's obviously, the formal piece of mentorship where it's like, hey, you set up like the monthly one-on-one with someone and you learn from them. But there's also the informal through which you can learn a lot from. So say you're like in a meeting with someone, super practical, and you think their presentation was amazing, or the way they spoke was really impressive, or the way they solved the problem was really great. Like just follow up with them on Slack, on whatever medium we have, and like try to understand how they did what they did, and like be that sponge, because that really helps you understand and grow. The other piece that I also highly recommend is really embracing the growth when it comes to mentorship conversations. So oftentimes your mentor will tell you something that you didn't necessarily expect. And that's typically, a very good signal, because that means they're stretching your thinking, they're stretching where you're going. And so in those situations, like actually don't push back, be open-minded, maybe take a deep breath, take a couple minutes, and then come back to what they're saying. But that's really how to make the most out of mentors I found over the course of my career.
Thank you. So listen, so we touched on mentoring, but a mentor has to really understand the craft. So I'm pretty curious, how do you think that product management's changed since the last 10 years? I think there was some kind of shift in pandemic, and I have my thoughts on it, but I'm also interested to hear you, how going through all those leading companies showed you how the position evolved over time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, look, product management, I think, has evolved significantly, and it will keep continuing to evolve. The role is still fairly new, probably like 20, 30 years, depending on how you count it. Like, and if you compare that to, for example, like and it's, becoming more and more prevalent. And so if you compare that with sort of like the marketing role that really, was instituted late 19th century, early 20th century, marketers are everywhere now. And I think the same thing is slowly happening with product management. The key changes that I've observed over the last 10 years is that, number one, the role is becoming more mainstream. So while product managers probably 20 years ago or so would be primarily confined to tech organizations, maybe in Silicon Valley, maybe in the Bay Area, you now see product managers at more traditional companies. And that's a really exciting and positive signal, because it means that these companies care about business outcomes, customer centricity, and that's really great. The second thing that has changed in the product management role as compared to, say, 10 years ago is that it's much more multifaceted than it used to be. I think like you could get away with like being a PM for like a specific, kind of product, type of product, web application or mobile app. Now I think PMs really need to stretch across and like at least be dangerous, know enough to be dangerous across all of those things. And especially obviously, need to use AI in their day to be as effective as they possibly can. The other thing that's obviously hugely evolved compared to 10 years ago is that there is now PM tooling available. I remember when I started my gig at DocuSign, that one of my first projects was to put a roadmap together. And it was super manual. It was super painful. I had to get on 30 individual calls with the PMs across the organization and drop boxes in a PowerPoint. Now, the way you do this is you use tools like Product Board. You share a roadmap in your organization. Everybody collaboratively contributes to it. You have your source of truth, and then you go and iterate from there. So it's been tremendous change, and I think the product role is going to become ever more mainstream and democratized.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard stories. I have not seen that firsthand, but you're saying that the danger is that the product managers have too much to do, and at the same time, I've seen as a reverse sickness where in, let's call it, unnamed product in Microsoft, the product management would be so granular that there would be PMs for a specific button, but they wouldn't have a team, and they would be like salespeople going from team to team, asking to get some of the wonderful button ideas they had to be implemented. So that sounded like product development hell to me, to not only to have so little responsibility and no tools to do whatever with it. Which actually leads me to my next question, and that would be, what do you believe are the biggest product management misconceptions that are still flying around?
Yeah. That's an interesting one. So I think like one that has been flying around for a while that we've actually made huge progress on is that product managers are the mini CEOs, and they can basically give direction and everything will happen. And I think that actually sets particularly like PMs that are early in their career up for failure. Going back to your earlier point, like as a new PM on the team, right? Because then you're like, your expectations are so high, you're like wondering yourself, and I get this a lot from people I talk to, like, hey, I can't just tell people what to do stuff and they're going to do it. No, it takes like influencing without authority. It takes getting the data, it takes getting the customer feedback, and like, actually like doing the hard work of like convincing and influencing. So that's still a misconception that I think we're fighting with, but that has become much better. A second misconception is that it's all about strategy. It's a blend of strategy. The product manager role is a real blend of strategy and execution. And the PMs that succeed are the ones that can do both. It's like, yes, the later you go in your career, the more strategy you'll do. But like really the foundation is like executing really, really well and getting things out the door based on customer feedback and making notable customer impact. And the third misconception, and we see this, and we're saying like, product management is coming more mainstream, is that the product role is oftentimes, and this is very, very unfortunate, still perceived as a project management role. And so oftentimes what we'd see at Product Board is like some leaders in the organizations that are very excited about introducing product management or product management new in the organization. And they're asking us like, hey, how do we make sure everybody gets away from the project management mindset and really everyone drives towards product management? And that's when they turn to Product Board, because like it gives the folks on the team the tooling that they need to drive customer centricity in the organization, actually drive customer centric outcomes in their product for their customers.
Awesome. Speaking of which, I may take a small detour here, but how do you then define product excellence in Product Board? Obviously, it's a situation like who watches the watchers. So how do product management tool builders product manage their own tool?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, it's like it's funny because it's very meta, right? Like because like you're basically building for yourself as the customer, and that's both the challenge and the curse. But yeah, no, it's honestly great. So the way we think about product excellence, I mean, look, it's basically also it's like I think a cultural approach, but it's also a well-defined framework by our founder Hubert Pollon, who basically wrote like lots of blog articles on this and lots of content on this that's available on our website. And I would say it's a set of best practices that we cherish and live and breathe that help us run an efficient product organization, sort of both on the managerial level as well as the individual, PM level. And so there's three key pillars to that. Number one is that it always starts with customer and market insights to really like shape the roadmap, shape the strategy, shape the feature in the first place. And for that, at Product Board, we use tools that we have like Product Board Pulse that like basically leverage all the customer feedback using AI, create feedback themes, which then can translate into feature. The second part of the product excellence framework is about, having a clear strategy. Super, super important. Like you need a strategy that is clearly documented, clearly communicated, clearly shared out, with us buy-in not only within the product team, but like with engineering, design, and your go-to-market functions. And that's obviously also something that we use Product Board for. We have documents at Product Board where we document our strategy, share it across the organization, get feedback and buy-in, and drive that visibility across the teams really quickly. We also have a way to model OKRs and key results coming out of the strategy. So we just make sure that everything that gets built out is up there. The final piece in the product strategy framework that we live and breathe is really these inspiring roadmaps and communicating inspiring roadmaps. So that means we communicate roadmaps very visually because it makes it really easy, really quickly to really quickly understand what's getting delivered when. And so, for example, like we also have customer-facing roadmaps where we would embed things like screenshots so that customers can be like, oh yeah, this is exciting, this is what's coming up, and that obviously also increases customer buy-in on that front.
So using all that great know-how, how do you make Product Board, different, more like, how do you set it apart in a crowded market? And you did mention polls, so let's go there too. I'd love to hear about it because it will help us to finally focus our conversation on the topic of this live, which is user centricity.
Yeah, totally. So look, Product Board is, as I mentioned, an end-to-end customer-centric product management platform. And the thing that we're really strong at is really helping PMs be customer-centric, starting customer first, and using that as the key input for strategy and roadmap development. The really exciting product that we released just a few months ago is Product Board polls, and that helps PMs basically collect the feedback across the different data sources in their organizations, whether that's Salesforce, Zendesk, or whatever they might use, centralize it in a common repository so that it's available for everyone in the organization, and glean insights from it through feedback themes that get automatically generated using AI, so that you as a PM can basically say, hey, here's the top things that customers are asking for. And there's a couple like really exciting use cases that Product Board Pulse supports. Say like you're a new PM starting in a product organization, you can basically go into Pulse and ask a question that's like, hey, what are the biggest pain points that customers are talking about today? Or another use case is, say you can go into a quarterly planning cycle. Like you can zone in on like the customer segment that you're serving, and you can probe like, hey, I'm thinking about this feature idea. Is this something customers are concerned about? And then like you get like bullet pointed list of like, yeah, these customers have been telling about us, and here's what they're saying. And then the third and also final very exciting use case that helps being customer centric is like you can go in and ask questions about a specific customer. When you, for example, like jump on a customer call, you can be like, hey, what is customer X saying about our product, so that you as a PM can confidently show up to that call and have that conversation. So that's really our strength. That's what sets us apart. It's really this focus on customer centricity, giving PMs the customer insights to build really impactful products and maximize the ROI of the product development team.
So based on that, let me be a little bit controversial, because when you look at product management, we always have this like ideal situation, the ones that people like myself and people who train product managers aspire to, who the ideal situation. And then there's the grim reality of actually doing it day to day, when you are under constant pressure. Maybe developers don't really like your direction, yada yada. So in this world, honestly, how much does user feedback really mean? Is it something that we as PMs need to pursue very strongly, or is it really about pleasing stakeholders and perhaps fix a bug or two in the meantime and call it user centricity?
I think fixing bugs is a part of the answer and definitely necessary. Maybe not the most fun part of the job, but like super important. Your customers will love it. But I definitely say like start with user centricity and customer centricity first. And I think the great thing that, now with all the tooling available, I think the challenge that used to happen, to your point, Bart, is kind of like, yeah, you would come up with a customer example, you try to convince the engineers that it's kind of exciting, and then, you wouldn't necessarily get the buy-in you need. But I think what we're doing, and I think what is happening with all the data. So first, I think all the data was available. Now we're actually able to make sense of the data that was available with things like Product Board Pulse, with things like generative AI that enable this. Now what we're seeing is that the PMs have even more data at their hand to go into these conversations with engineers, designers, other cross-functional partners, and make even more compelling cases for the product and investments that they're planning to do. In addition to that, Product Board also makes it like super easy to actually tie the things that a product manager wants to build, not only backed by customer feedback, but also in the strategic direction of the company by linking it directly to the strategic objectives. And so I'd say generally, like, we find ourselves less in conversations that are about like, hey, should we really do this? Like, once we have the customer like clearly lined up, the data behind it, etc. And we quickly find ourselves more like, yeah, okay, we get why we're doing this. Now let's actually figure out and go do and drive impact for customers.
Awesome, thank you. So that leads me to my next question about like, how do you balance all that? How do you, on the one hand, follow diverse user feedback and the strategic direction of a product? Because I saw a situation where there was some strategy, some goals, and at the same time, you could see that it wasn't really compatible with what users wanted. And at the same time, on one hand, you want to be user-centric, built for the users. But on the other hand, perhaps it's a little bit like with the fake Henry Ford quote of like, if we did what users wanted, we would have breed faster horses or something like that rather than build cars.
Yeah. No, that's a great question. And I think like honestly, like both the user perspective and the strategy matters. I think there's like no denying that. And so what we do at Product Board is, as I mentioned already, like we use what's called the product excellence framework, where we have a set of best practices to sort of marry strategy and also user feedback. And those are typically closely intertwined. You just typically need to look at the right level of the organization to do that. And so the way we think about, like, for example, like strategy is codified in our framework. We're like, hey, what are like sort of like the imperatives that we need to get to from a user perspective? What are the imperatives that we need to get to from a business perspective? And typically when you look at the right layer organizationally, that's usually when they marry up. Now, sometimes, different teams will have different objectives and you need to be cognizant of that. Like say, for example, a growth team might, optimize more for activation rates. And that's kind of like the driver, the strategy behind it. But like when you unpack that and you put the other lens of it, like, hey, how do we actually drive the activation rates? Then you go back to the user pain points really quickly. And then you can unpack and tie that, that strategy and really tie to that customer centricity. And that's what our product excellence framework is all about. It's like, yeah, we recognize there's business goals, but as soon as you start unpacking that and how you want to achieve that, then you need to ultimately take it back to customer centricity if that's not where you started in the first place. And then you achieve that right balance in the portfolio to ultimately drive both customer outcomes as well as business outcomes, which are really closely intertwined.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. Even today at work, we had a situation where we basically had a solution presented to Bill, and it was like, what's the problem here? Oh, the problem is this. So why don't we take it a step back and fix it before we have to do this weird thing? That's an excellent point. So I think that's like something that everyone needs to be aware when doing product management in the room. Like, be the voice of reason. Identify the problem, identify the user's perspective, find the way to address the business needs and be user-centric at the same time. It can be far apart, but it can be very close together when you do it right. And in spirit of making this interactive, how about I see there is one question from the audience, quite big. So rather than wait until the end, I think we can just check it out now. And Sarah Bolton is asking, what happens if you're a PM at a young company which may not have a mature product team and may be too focused on project management versus product management? Do you have any advice how to better educate internally on what PM should be prioritizing within a small organization? How do you show it to the superiors?
Yeah. No, that's a great question, Sarah. Thank you for sharing. Look, I think everyone in an organization can help really drive this evolution for product management and help drive to make the function, more customer centric, which is really where it begins. The simple thing that I think everybody can do as a PM, as a product lead manager, group product manager, VP, and we do this at Product Board all the time, is just post and share the customer feedback that you're getting on calls and channels, because like there's nothing more real, like say Slack or whatever it might be, because there's nothing more real than a quote from a customer that is truly upset because something is not working, or who's truly excited about something that is actually working. And that builds that muscle of customer centricity, which is really what the product function is anchored in, what drives the evolution. The second thing that you can do, it's something that I used to do at DocuSign and other places, is basically like have small working groups of like the folks that are really excited of like bringing the PM discipline forward at the company, and look at best practices together, like articles, like content on the internet. Like I'm sure you have a lot of stuff, Bart, that people can go over and sort of read and learn from. And the final thing is like, look, Product Board is obviously also here to help. We have a lot of articles, a lot of content online. We're a tool that really helps certain companies like structure the product management function and drive evolution there to make it more customer centric, to give them best practice templates, to help PMs be more customer centric using Product Board Pulse. So I think there's a bunch of options available for you. But I love that you're thinking about how to improve the function. It's really meaningful.
And from my end, I just want to add to it that in the smallest organization, it's about your initiative, your like willingness on what you want to do. So it's not as like all clear cut defined like in the biggest orgs. So if you want to be a project manager, you probably can. If you want to be a product manager, you have to fight for it. You have to show that you bring the most value this way. But your responsibilities are probably much more adaptive and plastic when compared to a very mature organization. And that, I don't have a good segue, but let's get back to the regular schedule programming. And it's one of the questions that I like to answer, but this time I'll allow my guest to chip in. And I think that's a problem that also can confuse people when being product centric, is that sometimes when you look at the feedback, it's all about people who are pretty upset, or especially like the most passionate, let's call them users, shout the most when they are frustrated. So how to recognize a single frustrated and a very loud voice from the feedback that can actually make the product better? Because if you only listen to the troublemakers, and with all due respect to all of you passionate with your products, then you might find yourself building only products for those few people, which is also not good.
Right. Yeah. No, that's a great point. I would say generally the question is like, hey, how do we make sure we build the most impactful things as product managers? And as part of that, and we build the products that matter, drive the greatest ROI for the product organization and for the company. So as part of that, saying no and really emphasizing on what's most important is absolutely critical. And so the standard process here is like, number one, like truly listen to what the person has to say. Like even if they're screaming and it might be annoying, truly try to deeply understand where they're coming from. Because like I think oftentimes, like say a customer like yells at you, or somebody yells at you within the organization to go build something, there's a driver behind it. I think it's really important to understand that driver and the goals and the motivation behind it. The second thing is then, I think like it really also helps to actually go deep and understand and evaluate what they are actually asking for. And then the third and final piece is, once you've made your decision, whether it's a yes in 2 years from now or no, never, like clearly communicate how you got to that conclusion and what else is on the roadmap that you are doing instead, because that will help that person understand the reasoning behind it and hopefully like understand your decision. So I've been like in numerous conversations with customers where I was like, hey, I know this is really important to you. I fully understand like how your process works internally. I fully respect that you need that, but like, hey, look, here's these other things that, we are doing that maybe, getting at the problem you're trying to solve, or that drive value in your organization in another way. And for that is obviously, communication is super important. Having these structured roadmaps in your organization is super important. Having documents that clearly outline your reasoning in terms of competing priorities linked to customer feedback is super important. So that's what I would recommend on that front.
So you touched on something pretty important, because you probably can diplomatically and with respect, but easily say no to your users. What about stakeholders? What about when we all sit for weeks in the room to become user-centric, when we have a strategy and a roadmap that marries the business goals and a user perspective, and then someone with real power comes into the room and says, I need this done today. How do you say no to that?
Yeah. That's a good one. So I think, look, the role of product managers in situations like that is to tee up the best possible decision that you can for the organization, right? Like that's how I think about it. Product managers act as the spine of the cross. You have the data, you collect the data, you create the cases, you do the evaluations of like pros, cons, custom frameworks, whatever it might be. So your biggest asset here is the data and the customer feedback, and like lining that up in a clear way that an executive stakeholder, like for example the one you're referring to, can make a decision is the best thing you can do. So whether you use this, for example, on product board where you can link customer feedback, you can like structure decision documents or whatever it might be, that might be an option where you like take them through. Here's the reasoning, here's the recommended path. But like the fact is, an executive can always disagree with the direction. I think your job as a PM is bring all the data that you can to the table, come with conviction, and defend against it and defend the best possible path. Do the homework, do the math, do the ROI calculation, and set up a really good decision to actually force the right level of conversation. I think the other thing that is sort of like frowned upon that I'm actually a big advocate of is escalation. So like PMs, I think also should not be afraid to escalate within the organization so that the right levels of stakeholders can meet and sometimes, have that conversation. Oftentimes I feel like folks early in their career are like, they see this as a failure. Like, hey, I need to escalate. I didn't successfully do my job, but I actually absolutely disagree with that. If you've done the homework, if you brought all the data in a single place and like you showed your thinking and you sort of disagree with the leader in the other organization, like escalate away and like elevate the conversation and just accelerate that decision making. I think you'll be doing your organization a huge favor.
So, changing topics slightly and looking into the future, what trends in user feedback and analytics excite you the most about the future of product development?
Yeah. So look, I think there's a couple super exciting things happening. I think voice of customer is becoming ever more important in product development, and that is obviously huge. We see that with AI, and particularly with also our Pulse product, we're able to 10x these voice of the customer use cases in the sense that we are allowing product managers to come through thousands of pieces of feedback that they would have never been able to before. And so that ultimately allows them to build better products, drive higher ROI for the organizations, and really make a bigger impact. The second thing that I'm super excited about is also just the cross-functional nature of it. Like, Bart, you just gave the disagreement, the example where people are actually disagreeing on the table. What we are seeing by bringing all this customer feedback together in the central place and by using that as the foundation for decision making is actually, it's much easier to create alignment or tease out the pieces of this agreement to actually move things forward. So with all the data available, with all these possibilities, I think the product organization can actually drive decisions faster and thus make better product decisions and drive greater ROI of the products they're building.
And that really very organically moves us to data-driven decisions with the product you mentioned from product board, the Pulse. So
yes,
how do you tell us more about the Pulse for one thing, and how can we use tools like this to make more data-driven decisions?
Yeah, absolutely. So look, Pulse is, like I said, the central repository of feedback data in your organization. And so like data is really at the heart of it. So it helps you in terms of making data-driven decision when you're thinking about, your strategy for the year that you might put together, and you figure out like, hey, what are the biggest pain points for customers that might be having, like based on your target segment, based on certain criteria, like top annual recurring revenue customers, et cetera, and slice the data and slice the feedback that way, and quickly find where's the segment for biggest opportunity within your customer base. It also helps you on a day-to-day as a product manager when you're thinking about like, hey, what's the next feature I should sort of like start speccing out and like start building, by being able to leverage data from customer conversations where there might have been very specific feedback that you would have never caught because you would have never been able to go back to all these conversations that actually inform the direction of your feature. Like, hey, a customer had this very specific need on how certain data should be displayed. And it actually totally makes sense. They actually gave you the idea because guess what? Like oftentimes the customers that come to you, they know your product really, really well. And even though they might not be telling you that problem, you might have to unpack that. They actually give you like a really good solution idea that you can build on, that you can get through Product Pulse because it's able to scan all the data for you and make a couple of proposals for you, how you might want to address your feature. So those are just a few ways that really Pulse can help on the day-to-day and help PMs be more data-driven by actually looking across the feedback from a very strategic lens, but also from a day-to-day feature development lens.
Awesome, thank you. Which also leads me to a question that really sparked my interest, because I noticed that Pulse is both standalone and part of product board. How come? How did you reach a decision to have it both ways, really?
Sure. So look, we take obviously a very customer-centric approach to product development. And so that decision was very much informed by the needs of our customers. What we realize today is that there's a set of customers that's very successful in product board today. And they want additional voice of customer insights capabilities, like we said, to make the organization more customer-centric, to bring out the stakeholders to the table, to drive alignment faster. And for those folks like that are using this kind of platform offering, Product Pulse is part of the platform packaging. Now, there are other customers out there that really have a very urgent need about processing all the thousands and tens of thousands of pieces of feedback in their organization to determine, hey, what is next in terms of strategy? What is next in terms of roadmap? More the voice of customer level. And that could be a customer experience organization, that could be, in product management, but can also be outside. And so for those folks, Product Pulse is available standalone so that they can get going really, really quickly with it, drive value for the organization really quickly. And then when they're ready to expand to the rest of the platform with road mapping, strategic planning, and all the other great stuff that is in there, they're absolutely able to do that and take it from there. So we're really just trying to meet the needs of our different customers here and trying to get the value to them as quickly as we possibly can.
And that actually brings me to a question I meant, but also Kaylee is asking. So in the age of AI, what PMs can do to make sure AI is impactful in ways and isn't just a shiny new object for PMs to chase after that, and like to build on top of it? How do you think that AI will actually change product management in the future?
Yeah. So look, I think what I would recommend is, I think there's multiple lenses to this question. I think what I would recommend is like really as a PM, sort of like in your day-to-day, think about like where AI can have the biggest impact for you, and where does it accelerate you and turn you into this 10x PM or even more productive PM so that you can drive greater value for your organization. And that's a huge way to have impact. You can obviously use Product Pulse for that, many other ways you can do this. Then there's a second piece, which is like actually thinking about how to build AI product. And I would actually put very much the same lens onto it. Just like Pulse is a 10x product, I would say like as a product manager, the most exciting use cases to sort of target for your product are really the ones where AI either unlocks a completely new use case or 10x's an existing use case, so that when you approach your customers with it, they're like, oh yeah, this is like, we noticed the difference. This is a big step up. And that's exactly also what we're seeing with Pulse. So that's like my recommendation, like, driving impact for AI in your day-to-day, but also for the products that you're building. Now, obviously the PM role is changing with the help of AI, and it's going to change significantly ever more so in the coming years. Like, what we see, and maybe I'll just talk about this across the life cycle, is obviously, like, in ideation, like, that can happen much more quickly now with AI, because, like, hey, not only can you go in with ideas and product proposals, but product proposals can suggest additional ideas for you based on the customer feedback. In discovery, PMs can use AI to validate some of the ideas that they are having against customer feedback that already exists, and accelerate that cycle as well. And then finally, when it actually comes to the pieces of delivery of, like, writing product specs and go-to-market material, that's where AI really plays a role and, accelerates this process as well. And in Product Board, for example, we have pre-made prompts where you can quickly summarize pain points, write a product spec, and that really accelerates the job in the day-to-day. In the longer term, we also foresee a future where it's going to be like AI agents that can obviously help product managers automate some of the more mundane things of the task. Where it's like, hey, we're launching something, inform go-to-market team, hey, put some instrumentation in, whatever it might be. So that's also a really exciting future that we are getting ready for at Product Board and building towards. So it's definitely something to be on the lookout for, and it's going to make the PM role even more exciting and powerful.
Yeah, but I think there's also danger here. I think, and maybe it's subsiding, but the initial AI wave, I think, was like a bit of a marketing trap where some of us got too excited and started building AI features because everyone was building them. And now I think that 2025 will be a bit of a rude awakening that, well, customer centricity could have prevented, where rather than building AI for AI's sake, you would start asking, will users like this approach? I think there was like too many AI chatbots in products that didn't really benefit from them, rather than having the wow factor in it. At least this is like my perspective to chip into your great answer. And again, I think to close it out, thank you for presenting Post to the world. When I read about it, I was really excited because I saw like in-house small projects aiming to do the same, like to leverage AI to find trends, to find meaningful feedback, to automate this task and make it universally beneficial. So rather than spend hours basically through Excel sheets of data, you almost instantly know what to do to make an impact. So it's great to see a product that will help us build better. Thank you for that. And that's all I had for you today. I know we planned for half an hour and it ran slightly longer, but it was just such a great conversation that I would have felt bad if I just said, we had half an hour planned and it's dragging on. It wasn't dragging on. It was exciting. And I think that given the opportunity, we probably would have spent hours longer just talking about product management, and hopefully we'll get to do it again someday. Maybe not on such a concentrated topic, but general, like how to become a better product manager. Looking at your portfolio and achievements, I think you have a lot of great perspective we could have shared together.
Awesome. Yeah, that would be great. I really enjoyed the conversation as well, Bart. And yeah, would love to talk more about anything product management anytime. I'm super passionate about the topic, so any day.
Awesome. So if you want to become a better PM with me or with Christian, we're both mentors. Christian, do you want to plug anything from you? Is there a link where people can reach you to become your mentees, or you're just focusing on people in your org to help them grow?
No, I definitely help people outside of my org as well. So yeah, just I think LinkedIn is the best place to be, Christian Marek. So just look me up, and connect from there.
Awesome. So thank you for being available for those of us who are still aspiring to be VP of product. That includes me, if I'm being honest. And hopefully that's in for me one day. But for now, it was great talking about customer centricity. I hope that people who watched live and who will watch the later recording, which will be available on LinkedIn and my YouTube channel immediately after this live, can benefit hugely from it. And I will try to answer all your questions offline for those we didn't tackle during the live and those who will appear afterwards. So again, thank you for taking the time and taking the extra time tonight. I'm not sure what it is for you. Hopefully you don't have too many meetings to go today. We know how it is for our PMs. And see you soon again on this channel. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.